Wow, my favorite board game, Warhammer!
You mean the exciting and opulently expensive miniature wargaming sensation?
No, obviously I meant Warhammer Party. Welcome to the official Praximus Party premiere, a perfectly planned performance of profound prowess and prodigal proficiency. 6 passionate participants shall prove their potential through 7 painstakingly prepared projects of skill to procure points and prevail as the winner of the first official Praximus Party Paragon Trophy. This game board is Bretonian themed, meaning that each challenge will find the players in control of peasants and knights with which they must navigate the obstacles and constraints better than their adversaries. The team composition for each challenge will be determined by a dice roll, advancing the players through each of Bretonia's 7 regions on their way to the final engagement. The team composition will be determined by the colors of the tiles they land on, and each player's dice will always contain a range of 6 numbers that will land them somewheres in the next section. The final prize shall be awarded to the player with the highest score, and the prize shall be this extremely real but entirely incorporeal trophy, the Praximus Party Trophy number 1. The game kicks off with a dice roll of destiny, and the results are in. Each player hurls their die and moves the corresponding number of spaces. The stage has been set for a showdown between 2 teams of 3, which means we're diving headfirst into a thrilling game of distressing damsels. On the red team, we have the horrifying Hollow War, the devastating DK Emperor, and the savvy Shadow, eager to unleash chaos. Facing them, the blue team boasts the smoldering Smelly, the penetrating Pentele, and the outstanding Overcharge. Each player will command a swarm of peasants and other lowly servants, but this isn't a mere melee. Each also controls 2 dazzling damsels, with the freedom to harness any magical lore they desire. With both teams fielding identical armies of basic units, the choice of magic will be the ultimate game changer. The team which chooses wisely and executes skillfully will be crowned with 5 points, while the losing team will earn just 1. And now, we begin. That's right, folks, an epic clash is about to begin as the blue and red teams descend upon the battlefield. The blue team takes their places on the high ground, poised and ready, their peasant forces packed tightly like a coiled spring, ready to unleash agricultural annihilation. And unleash they do. A tidal wave of subsistence farming surges down the hill with the unstoppable momentum of an ox-drawn plow. The battlefield erupts into chaos as cavalry and turnips from both sides collide on the forested left flank. There clash a thunderous spectacle of pitchforks and hooves. The damsels, eager for clout, unleash their first spells with piercing precision, turning the air into a crackling storm of magical destruction and sepia filters. Is it a bird, a plane, an ubermensch? 9! It's thousands of arrows pincushioning your friends and family as far as the eye can see. But wait, Pentele has an idea.
Oh, we've been at this for almost 200 hours straight, dude. I'm gonna croak at this rate.
Long gaming marathons sure can take a lot out of you, but I've got a secret weapon for remaining vivacious for extended periods of time.
Ooh, what is it?
It's called food.
Food is so overrated. You have to spend so much time preparing and cooking and making sure you don't mess up on any of the steps. I, for one, prefer...
Look, we've all heard the state-sponsored rumors about food. But what if I told you that I've got an exclusive line on delicious, chef-crafted, ready-to-eat meals? Imagine if you could have all the benefits of this ancient energy remedy, but only had to spend 2 minutes heating it up. At this rate, you can have dietitian-approved meals at a whim, without even interrupting your multiplayer games. It's even cheaper than takeout. For those of us with a keen eye for nutrition, Factor has over 35 options on its weekly menu with notable entries such as Calorie Smart, Protein Plus, Vegan, Vegetarian, and even Pescatarian. Add more than 60 options for add-ons like breakfast, which everybody knows is the most important meal of the day. Take it from me, a service like this can be a fantastic boon to your productivity without costing you in areas like nutrition. Get 50% off your first Factor box and 20% off your next month of orders using my link. Click the link in the description or scan the QR code with your phone. He sends a daring squad of Yaomen to flank the right, seizing Hollow War's attention, who responds with a charge of his own to meet the threat head-on. Overcharge and DK Emperor's forces convert the left flank into a jungle of carnal fury. The blue team's downhill momentum seems unstoppable as their attack surges ever onward. Seeking to get featured in a viral clip, blue team's damsels launch a comet of Cassandora straight into the heart of the red peasant blob. Kaboom! And in an instant they are vaporized, leaving nothing but ridges and furrows as far as the eye can sow. The battlefield becomes a blood-soaked theater of horror as peasants hack and slash with everything they could get their hands on. Axes, pitchforks, shovels, turning the field into a threshing melee. Limbs fly, blood flows, and the carnage spreads like a swarm of locusts. And the brutality continues. Hundreds of serfs, now lifeless, become nothing more than fertilizer for the soil they'd spent their lives cultivating. Smelly and Shadow leap into the fray as they become the first lords to join the peasants in the gory muck. This isn't just a battle, it's a medieval festival of blood. Pentelay's right flank maneuver digs deeper into disaster as Shadow crashes down like the hammer to Hollowar's anvil, smashing through Blue's forces and reaping a bountiful harvest of bones. With no reserves remaining, the front lines sizzle with desperate spells as Blue's wizard ladies frantically patch up their own troops and Red's damsels of distress retaliate with devastating designs of their own. Pentelay and Overcharge throw everything they have into winning the right flank, surrounding and crushing Hollowar's frustrating harassers in a desperate bid to break through. The red center begins to crumble, and Blue seizes the opportunity, charging through the gap with all the ferocity of peasants having just heard about Prima Nocta. But just as they break through, they're ambushed from all sides, their overextended forces caught in a carefully laid trap. At the same time, Red's rear is rocked by a rapturous raid of riders, which ruthlessly ravages through their ranks of rangers without remorse. The battle rages on with the power balance remaining evenly split, both sides absorbing every blow, like masochists at an all-you-can-eat face-punching buffet. DK Emperor decides it's time to end the stalemate and charges straight at Smelly, plowing through enemy formations with wild abandon. Blue's arrows rain down, but he remembered his chainmail raincoat. In the chaos, DKM summons a manticore, but oops, he forgets to control it, leaving it flapping uselessly while terrified peasants pepper it with arrows. All eyes are on the central contention as both teams magically bolster their champions for a final showdown. Hollowar makes his move, targeting Smelly, who scrambles to escape, ducking into a line of peasants and just barely slipping away. In a surprising twist, Smelly then turns around and makes a wild dash down the hill back into the enemy lines, only to be tripped by Hollowar on the way. Meanwhile, Pentelay and Shadow ignite a fierce new battle on the right flank, with arcane eruptions surging across the battlefield, wreaking havoc on both sides. Despite the intense struggle, Blue's central and left flanks suddenly collapse. Their forces are scattered, isolated, and powerless. Chaos ensues as maidens engage in a savage catfight in the meadows, surrounded by the skeletons of slain serf simps. Overcharge rushes in to save Smelly, but instead, he quickly finds himself surrounded and in grave danger. DKM and his concubine seize the moment, hunting down the beleaguered damsels and exploiting every numerical advantage to devastating effect. Pentelay and Shadow continue their rodeo, pounding each other into a bloody mess until, wait, what? Pentelay suddenly remembers he left the oven on at home. Oh no, it was just a ruse! His bodyguards storm in, starting a savage surprise strike on Shadow, who desperately struggles to flee. Just in the nick of time, Hollowar arrives with a horde of peasants, pulling Shadow out of the fire. Meanwhile, Blue's forces fall apart, their cohesion shattered. Red, on the other hand, reintegrates their recovered units into an intimidating formation, ready to crush Blue's scattered remnants. In the end, Blue's morale shatters like glass and their forces disintegrate, fleeing the battlefield in a panicked wave of cowardice. The field is littered with the debris of their retreat, and with that, the first minigame concludes. Time to tally the points and see who stands victorious. Wow, there you have it. In a contest of controlling crowds and carefully choosing categories of conjurations, the red team clearly conveyed cutting-edge capabilities and collected 5 points each for their inconvenience. Despite earning only 1 point each for their problems, blue team has many opportunities to come out back on top yet. Since the Spectacle Sanitation Squad is swiftly scrubbing serfs from the saturated surfaces of the settled Showdown Stadium, our spotlight shifts to the second stage. Everyone rolls their dice and heads to the Forest of Shalons, where it emerges that 4 shall do battle against 2. Shadow and Overcharge are initially intimidated by these odds, until they find out that they'll be piloting the brand new John Deere Necrosphinx, Earth Tiller, and Surf Suppressor Deluxe. That's right, our next battle will see 4 gallant Bretonnian lords in a gruesome cage match against 2 ghastly Granite Golems. golems. The 4 Bardin Bretonnian barons will receive ordinal scores relative to the total damage they inflict on the Necrosphinx navigators, while the dangerous duo will be awarded 2 points for every kill they can secure. Both teams will have to choose between cooperating to secure a lesser victory or competing to get the most kills at the risk of getting totally wiped out by the enemy in the process. Let's get down to business. 3 gallant knights ride forth together towards certain death. Wait, where's the 4th? Smelly has decided to go it alone against 2 colossal engines of death. Egad! Shadow and Overcharge choose to wait until the last moment before allowing their Masonic monsters to come to life and begin their reign of terror. Shadow strikes first blood against DK Emperor, leaving an entire chicken dinner clean off his loins, as Pentele quickly dives in to crack the first chip off of Overcharge. Now the battle is truly afoot. Smelly tries to capitalize on Overcharge being distracted, but the Necrosphinx displays impressive reflexes and lands a ravaging riposte. The Bretonnian lords must rely on their speed and agility to get the best of these mobile horse choppers. But Pentele and DKM end up sandwiched between the blender's blades and start losing health fast. So long as the melee stays tight and the giants are able to respond to aggression in kind, there's no hope for the noble knights, so they quickly disperse to find another way. Although the Necrosphinx can turn on a dime, nothing can stop it from taking the damage of an attack from the rear. Working together, the cavalry are able to begin consistently landing blows with impunity, racing around the blundering brutes like tin can mosquitoes. The sweeping blades serve as lawnmowers rather than man-shorteners, as the horses nimbly dodge their slicing swipes. Knowing that this short life will count for squat without the damage to show for it, DKM continues to take risky moves and suffers consistent hits for his brazen approach. However, the wounds yield him little, as Hollowar has found a way to deal maximum damage without paying the blood price for it. Shadow finds himself surrounded suddenly, and the competitive Overcharge simply stands by as his partner gets whittled down. After all, he knows there will be more potential kills for him with his ally gone. That is, of course, unless going solo turns out to be a lot harder than he expects. Hollowar tanks some damage in order for the knights to deliver the killing blow against Shadow, leaving Overcharge in the situation he apparently wanted: solitude. Of course, it's not actually solitude, since the entire enemy team is still here, and they're more than happy to keep him company with a constant stream of cold steel and warm horse manure. For a moment, it seems that at least one lord will die, as Overcharge refuses to go quietly, but the blades somehow fail to find their mark, and the second Sphinx goes down without taking anyone along with him. All 4 lords survive, and the second game is complete. What an exciting outcome! Competing to secure kills for themselves, Shadow and Overcharge exposed themselves to the superior mobility of the Horse Lords and faced annihilation before securing any points of their own. Hollowar surges ahead as the killer of Colossi, with Smelly not far behind. Despite taking the pounding of the century, Pentele managed to pull ahead in the final moments and avoid last place, which belonged to DK Emperor. Here are the scores so far, along with the current totals. With our Necrotech mechanics on scene attending to the Necrosphinxes, it's time that we proceed to Bastogne. The dice reveal 2 teams of 3. What's this, shaking? An earthquake? A surprise visit from your in-laws? Nay, 'tis but a horde of 100,000 Skaven slaves. We somehow convinced them to let us hurl boulders the size of Volvos at them with no chance of compensation, because this was somehow still an improvement over their previous jobs at the Skaven Blight iPhone factory. And so, we have the premise of our next challenge. Each player will be given 5 minutes to crush as many rats as possible. It's like whack-a-mole if PETA hadn't confiscated all the real moles. Using only a single squadron of trebuchets, our intrepid competitors will be forced to use manual fire mode only. That's right, no right-clicking for these guys. It's a test of pure skill and ballistic dynamics. Each player is scored based on the number of Skaven they are able to flatten within their team, scoring either first, second, or third. Smelly, Overcharge, and DKM move confidently against the first formation of Skaven, who are a little boulder shy and prefer to keep their distance, requiring more skillful long-range shots. Unfortunately, using a trebuchet against such distant targets is not easy for amateur siege engineers, and so these somewhat dulled sharpshooters are coming up short consistently with the long-ranged attacks. Smelly is comfortable with squishing the Skaven, but Overcharge is having a bit more trouble with the long-range calculations. DK Emperor is trying to figure out how to operate the trebuchet still. 5 minutes passes in the blink of an eye as selected Skaven are surgically separated from their structural stability from amongst their somewhat safer squad mates. 134 Skaven end up perishing during this cracked carnival of carnage. For the second round, Pentele, Hollowar, and Shadow will face a much more up-close and personal formation of Skaven. It appears that close proximity to siege equipment is an antidote to Skaven infestation, as Red Team confidently chucks concrete chunks directly into the cranium millenniums of craven corrupted chipmunks, quickly accumulating hundreds of kills. By the time 5 minutes passes by, 350 rodents are roasted and we're ready to tally up the final scores. Would you look at that? Those are some flat rats sat at bat. My producers are telling me that despite their new two-dimensional condition, the Skaven slaves were just grateful to get to see the sun. Smelly and Shadow demonstrated some serious prowess during that challenge, securing a total of 54 and 141 kills respectively, gaining first place on both of their teams. Second place goes to Overcharge and Pentelay, with 11 and 133 kills respectively. I bet Overcharge is glad we were scoring within teams and not collectively. Hollow War and DK Emperor take the last place with 76 and 2 kills. Wow. So far, our heroes have been enjoying the festivities at everyone else's expense, whether it be ancient constructs, Skaven slave labor, or even each other's damsels. Yet every noteworthy knight nurtures the notion that humility is a necessary noble virtue. And today, we're manifesting a modicum of modesty to the margins. Somehow, Overcharge and Shadow find themselves once again on the minor side of a 2-4 split, but this time, they'll likely fare better against the delicious Bretonnian whelps. In this game, the dastardly duo demands destruction. Shadow and Overcharge will hunt the remaining players using an Exalted Bloodthirster and 3 trusty Karanak Bloodhounds. The hunter shall earn 2 points for every kill, and the hunted shall score based on the order in which they are slain, with the last to survive earning a hefty 6 points. What could be more horrifying than the sight of a soaring demon of corn, thirsting for your blood in particular, and the sound of his snarling hounds hot on your trail? The mere thought of it is enough to keep even the bravest knights cowering deep in the overgrowth. Yet despite these sinister sensory stimulations, one knight stands out from the crowd. Pentelay remains unhidden, standing proud in the open whilst his brethren hide in the woods not far from him. Shadow and Overcharge quickly spot him and cannot resist the temptation. Is this gesture meant to be some kind of sacrificial gambit to buy time for his friends? Well, it turns out that no, it was nothing of the sort. Pentelay runs straight towards DK Emperor, who is very much questioning his choice of friends as the demons soon become aware of him as well. Karanaks that were sneakily placed in the rear are quick to capitalize on this treacherous reveal, and DK Emperor becomes the first player eliminated, falling prey to Shadow's hounds as Pentelay makes his escape. The betrayer then leads the ravenous bloodthirsty towards Smelly and Hollow War, who immediately realize what is happening and flee out of the woods in a bid to reach the map's other forest. Unfortunately for Pentelay, he just isn't fast enough to outrun his poor life decisions and finds himself staring up at Overcharge, who begins lending a legendary lashing. As more and more demons close in around Pentelay, who continues to pursue the other knights even now, Smelly finds himself quickly becoming surrounded and before long crosses paths with the vanguard of the encroaching demons, just as Pentelay meets his timely end. Once the demons have your scent, there's no escaping, and Smelly can only hope to delay the inevitable now. Although Hollow War is also discovered just then, his agile evasive maneuvers buy him just enough time to outlist Smelly and become the last man standing as Shadow brings the hammer down on Smelly. What a bloodbath! Hollow War executed excellent evasions, earning first place and 6 points. Smelly wasn't far behind him and got himself 4 points for a close second. Pentelay came into 3 points for third place, and DKM walked away with just 1 point for being the first elimination. I guess I shouldn't say walked, it was more like he was carried out on a stretcher. Of the 3 kills that occurred, Overcharge obtained 1 and Shadow obtained 2, earning 2 and 4 points respectively. With such asymmetric antics behind us, the competitors roll their way into more balanced conditions. The coast of Lyonesse provides 2 teams of 3, and so Pentelay, Overcharge, and Smelly reunite as the blue team, hoping for a chance at redemption against DK Emperor, Shadow, and Hollow War, commanding the red team. Our next minigame is Rioting Relics, whereby each team must struggle to protect their Soul Grail relic while attempting to destroy their opponents. We will bring in some special ringers to control the objectives separately from the participants. Will this fateful reunion yield the results Blue hopes for, or simply serve to refresh bad memories? Let's find out. I personally hold the reins to Blue Team's relic, clearly giving them a massive advantage that's practically guaranteed to lead them to victory. Pentelay deploys 3 mighty Lewin Leon Corps, while Smelly gambles in the opposite direction, selecting nothing but thousands of peasants, plus a few Hippogriff Knights, all led by Albrecht de Bordelot. Overcharge tactfully creates the body of the blue team with a well-rounded composition of archers, infantry, and even some cavalry, all led by Rapans, giving the others strategic legroom to commit to their daring plans. The Red Baron, champion of our previous competition, has custody of the red team's relic, all of whom having selected Lewin Leoncourt as their champion as well. DKM brings to arms a paltry peasant party, but with one major difference from his counterparts on the blue team. He also brought a trebuchet. Shadow also sees the merit in having a trebuchet, along with several squadrons of royal hippogriffs, creating a small but terrifying force. Finally, Hollow War invests the majority of his funds into 3 Pegasus Knight squadrons and carefully hides them in the back corner, beyond the precipice of a hill just barely large enough to conceal them. As battle breaks, the trebuchets begin shipping construction materials directly to Pentelay's 3 kings, but quickly notice a much more appealing blob of 10,000 peasants loitering in a tightly grouped formation around Blue Team's relic. Hollow War springs his Pegasus trap immediately and opens the contest with a dogfight on the left flank. Most of his Pegasi sidestep Blue's skyward sentinels, but surmise that sparring with the singularity of serfs sounds sticky and soar back to skirmishing with saboteurs. Overcharge attempts his own surprise, but quickly regrets it when every single red hippogriff suddenly takes flight and chases them away. Have you ever seen 30 men be instantly compacted into the size of a communion wafer? Well, apparently, that's why they're called Blessed Trebuchets, because it's a sacrament supply store at the Blue Team's base, as their density-based defense reaches cosmic concentrations. I brilliantly decided to move my relic and its bodyguard away from the bashing boulders, but Smelly is committed to the human instrumentality project and keeps his forces in place to continue being compressed into the dirt. Because Pentelay's loitering Lewin Legion is caught and forced into a dire dogfight near the red front line, Smelly feels provoked into a daring dive bombing of his own, but is quickly dispatched by Red's vastly superior numbers just before he can reach his trebuchet targets. Miraculously, one of Pentelay's ambush Lewin slips out of the aerial skirmish and dives onto the red relic, instantly dropping it down to half health. The entire defensive square collapses on him, but the tightly packed troops only make it harder for the relic to flee from the attacker. A second Pentelay assassin nearly reaches the relic as well, but is desperately gummed up by the entire aerial defense squad in the nick of time. Red and blue hippogriffs both rush in and land directly on top the shambolic scene. Even I can hardly see if the relic is alive in that mess. It's got less than a third of its health now, and many powerful attackers are still taking swings. Determined to clear a path, DKM's panicked damsel blasts a hole in the middle of Red's own defenders, but even that isn't enough to give the relic room to escape. Overcharge's cavalry fail to pierce the artifact's defensive barriers, but Pentelay's lord simply won't relent until the relic is crushed beneath its hippogriff's mighty claws. Imagine the horror the relic carriers felt as Lewin waded through the resisting peasants as if they weren't even there. Overcharge's second wave of cavalry also failed to break through, but they distract the defenders long enough for Smelly to send Alberic racing past the defenders and deep into Red's formation. Red's few remaining flying units dive at him, failing to stop him as he ducks and weaves with determined alacrity. Concerned that he could deal the finishing blow, Red's pursuing police do not let up. Suddenly, Alberic peels away. Did he come all that way for nothing? No, he gave Pentelay a chance to free his Lewin. Red forces catch up to both Lewin and Alberic shortly after they had escaped the Relic Brigade. But what's this? The blue army is arriving. The battle evolves from scrimmage to slaughter. Lewin lures his laggards into legions of polearm professionals, but the sacrificial blue wave is overall quickly and easily dispatched by the Red Army. Overcharge orders his own forces forward to reinforce Smelly's devastated vanguard, but will they arrive in time? The two escaping heroes never end up making it back, both ultimately being intercepted and routed. As Overcharge's forces join the main melee, a whirlwind of poppy-pigmented predators descend like pink lightning upon the entire breadth of their army, slaughtering the entire blue assault with vicious prejudice. With Blue's army nothing but a memory, Hollow War squadrons arrive to administer a lesson in righteous relic retirement. Smelly's Chalice custodians are barely standing after 10 minutes of constant trebuchet punishment, and offer less resistance than paper cutouts when the cavalry lands. While several blue formations remain locked in hopeless combat on Red's side of the field, every hero and flying unit Red can muster soars to Blue's relic and crashes into it, facing virtually no resistance. At 12 minutes 40 seconds, the relic is destroyed and Red claims victory. Despite Hollow War's opening ambush, the blue team maintained the initiative and kept Red in a reactionary posture for much of the game. Unfortunately, Blue's strikes fell short of inflicting the fatal damage they needed, and left themselves defenseless when Red launched their own operation to claim victory. Each member of the Red team earns 5 more points, and Blue find themselves once again earning only 1. Some clear leads are beginning to emerge in the Praximus party. With the shattered remains of our antique collection smoldering in Lyonesse, we charge ahead to the penultimate province, the wild, unpredictable forests of Arden. The tension mounts as the players roll their dice, numbers flashing, stakes rising, and just like that, they're split into teams. 4 versus 2, the perfect setup for what's coming next. Soup a Squig card. You've never seen anything like this. The blue team's 4 racers are about to put their equestrian skills to the ultimate test, speeding through the slick, oil-splattered streets of Nuln. But hold up, it's not just the treacherous roads that'll test their mettle. No, the red team has something far more chaotic up their sleeves. They command the squirming, explosive legion of Squigs, ready to punish any racer unlucky enough to cross their path. Shadow, DK Emperor, Overcharge, and Smelly are set to battle it out on horseback, racing neck and neck to victory. But meanwhile, Hollow War and Pentelay are biding their time, controlling the relentless Squig Sentinels aiming to hit and halt anyone daring to break through their chaotic onslaught. It's speed versus sabotage in a clash of skill, chaos, and Squig-fueled madness. Who will come out on top? The 4 racers explode onto the scene, and the first challenge isn't even the race itself, it's the colossal gates of Nuln. Imagine a ribbon-cutting ceremony, but this ribbon is a towering 2-story slab of solid wood. Aquitaine rocks ahead, charging for an early lead, only to be slammed to a halt by the unyielding gate. When the barricade finally shatters with a thunderous crash, the real chaos begins. The heroes burst forward, but before they can even catch their breath, boom! Squigs explode in their faces, setting the tone for the wild, trap-riddled Grand Prix. Forget the damage, Squigs aren't just about pain, they're tactical nightmares too. One unlucky strike can stop a night cold, sending them plummeting from first to dead last in an instant. And if you're the one lagging behind, you're Squig meat. These gnarly critters pile up, swarming you like a deadly bouncing avalanche of chaos with no mercy in sight. As they weave through the tight twisting streets, Corone and Aquitaine trade the lead, each pushing the edge, but it's Aquitaine who starts pulling ahead, steadily surging through the pack. Just when the others start closing the gap, Smelly makes his move, darting ahead with a perfect breakaway. But it's not a free ride. Detonating Squigs launch from every corner, keeping the competition on edge, teeth gritted, just trying to survive. Aquitaine's lead looks untouchable. Victory feels within reach, but then bam! A split-second miscalculation and a Squig nails him head on. His rival's eyes light up, thinking they've got him. But no, Aquitaine holds his ground and keeps charging. More Squigs hurl themselves at him, bouncing all around like chaotic, villainous pinballs, swelling the swarm of pursuers. As the final checkpoint looms, disaster strikes. A lone Squig knocks Aquitaine off balance, and just before his steed can recover, the entire Squig swarm descends, dogpiling him in a mad frenzy. His rivals roar past, seizing their chance. At the finish line, 2 Wurzags stand ready to greet the heroes, but Corone isn't about to slow down. He blasts through a gaze of Mork straight to the face and barrels through to steal first place. Overcharge and Shadow aren't far behind, storming across the line, and Aquitaine, the front runner, finishes in a shocking last place. But it doesn't end there. Furious with the Wurzags' interference, the racers turn back, mauling the Mork and grinding the Gork right out of them. As chaos erupts, the remaining Squigs seize the moment, completing the fastest victory lap in history and turning the once grand ceremony into a smoking crater of madness. Have you ever taken an equestrian joyride through the streets of Nuln? It's an absolute thrill ride, and no one knows that better than DK Emperor playing as Corone, who blazed through the finish line in first place, snagging a massive 6 points. Hot on his heels was Overcharge playing as Bordelot, charging hard and earning a solid 4 points for second place. Shadow, playing as the Chevalier, held strong in third, and as for Smelly, Aquitaine, well, he brought up the rear, crossing the line in last, but hey, it's not over until the Squig stop bouncing. We have explored the deepest and most dire circumstances to which any Total War player has ever been exposed. Squig carting, Sphinx hunting, Skaven squishing, what could be left for us in the ominous province of Corone? For our final contest, we have derived only the most heinous, foul, and unforgiving content imaginable. A match of traditional 6-player Warhammer Total War using only the Bretonnian faction. In an unlikely twist of fate which defies even my desire to roll the dice a second time, the same teams emerge as we saw in Distressing Damsels and Rioting Relics. It must be a sign from the gods that blue team will have the last laugh no matter the cost. Once again, the winning team will earn 5 points each, and the losing team shall earn only 1. Let's get to it. 2 teams with 3 seasoned commanders each, and no shortage of historic grievances to air out on the sacred field of battle. Trebuchets launch into action and immediately break the world record for the most deaths during a snowball fight. Hollow War wastes no time ordering his cavalry to furiously storm the forested high ground, as well as the valleys on the opposite flank. DKM and Shadow's own cavalry charges arrive shortly after, and Overcharge recovers the blue team's momentum by storming Red's center, but the flying nobles face tremendous range damage and a powerful counterattack. 3 minutes into the battle and already hundreds of soldiers are dead on both sides. Cavalry formations pull back from their initial charges, and now the infantry begin their doomed march towards their enemy's lines. Although DKM's hippogriffs continue to harass Overcharge's forested positions, they haven't stopped his vanguard from grievously routing Shadow's Lord. Smelly's decision to orient his siege engines towards killing valuable enemy units rather than focusing on Red's artillery proves ineffective, as the enemy artillery reduces his own to rubble with impunity before any significant damage can be achieved. As if that wasn't bad enough, DKM's forces redirect from the forest and run all along the blue team's center as easily as undoing a zipper. Pentele refuses to allow Smelly's deteriorating situation to undermine his army's morale and charges them directly at the enemy, a flurry of feathers and blood clearing the path. With Smelly's artillery out of action, Shadow and DKM's trebuchets are free to find new targets, jeopardizing Pentele's advance. Overcharge's forces obtain control over the forest, but their trebuchets are rendered completely useless by the trees, and they are still far from reinforcing their allies. A manic bloodbath erupts at the red front lines as Pentele fights his way to Hollow War's trebuchets and meets their guardians head-on. The combat is brutal, but blue team pushes forward, winning every skirmish in this region thanks to Pentele's masterful command of his cavalry. It seems inevitable that he will soon reach Shadow's trebuchets as well, which prompts Shadow to commit his remaining flying reserves to stem the tide. Overcharge emerges from the forest for a moment and the battle still gives an impression of near parity, but DKM's forces remain vivacious, having only engaged in massively advantageous fights so far, and cuts them off before they're even cleared the forest edge. The remainder of the red team's forces turn their backs on Pentele as they orient toward the final remaining blue army, which speaks volumes about the perceived threat their waxing offensive poses. Although Smelly and Pentele's forces do not relent, them and their foes are both ground to mere nubs, as the fate of this conflict shall be determined elsewhere. Without his archers and trebuchets being able to support him due to the dense tree cover, Overcharge is overtaken by a combined force led by DKM and Hollow War. Comets of Cassandora rip through the canopy and leave nothing but ash where once blue soldiers held the line. As squadrons of DKM's hippogriffs fly overhead towards the back line, it becomes clear to blue that this battle's outcome has been determined. Shortly after the red forces enter the woods in pursuit of the routing blue warriors, the battle ends. What a riveting conclusion. We've made our way across the entire Bretonnian game board, from Carcassonne to Couronne, and with no mini-games left with which to torture our unwilling test subjects, it's time to announce who was the victor. First place goes to Hollow War with an impressive 31 points, to whom we award the coveted Praximus Party Trophy number 1. Second place goes to Shadow with a respectable 28 points. The third place goes to DK Emperor with a sufficient 26 points. Now for the runners-up. Fourth place goes to Smelly Mustache, who finished with a lukewarm 19 points. Fifth place goes to Pentele, who finished with a curious 17 points. And in last place, Overcharge, finished with 13 points. Special thanks to the Red Baron for helping control NPC elements during the Rioting relics and shelling Skaven segments. We hope you've enjoyed the games. If you've made it all the way to the end, please leave a like and consider subscribing. Join our Discord if you want to be part of a great gaming community and participate in future events. Until next time, see ya!